This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Chasing Excellence. I'm Patrick. I'm here with Ben. How are you, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks, Patrick. How are you doing?
I'm great as well. I'm excited for this. It's one of those conversations that, like, as I'm getting ready for it, I think, how cool is it I get to do this?
That's awesome.
That's what I got. That's what I'm feeling today. We're going to do maybe a couple months ago, we had our friend Mark England on. We talked about something called Kydland's Law, which is something he introduced to us. And that must have been in the back of my mind. And then Seth Godin wrote a blog post that he called Gall's Law, Gall''S law. And so I just got it stuck on my head. So I started just randomly Googling and Wikipediaing, like, what are all these other laws that, like, we've heard about before? And so I started kind of collecting ones that I felt like, oh, that'd be kind of fun to talk to Ben about. And so that's what we've got. I've got 10. I don't know if we're going to get to 10. We might get to 5. Who knows? We've got 10 in front of us of these universal laws, these laws to live by. And so I thought it would just be fun to talk through some of them and see where the conversation goes. And obviously, we're going to bring the perspective of chasing excellence to the 5 factors: awareness, intention, action, health, happiness, hearts on fire, the things we talk about here. But I thought these are fun, useful laws to sort of have in the back of our minds and our back pockets as we go through our days, to see if we can't try to live, or at least recognize them and live a bit more in accordance with them. Cool?
Yeah, I dig it. I'm glad you're excited about this. I am too.
This will be kind of fun and thinking out loud a little bit for us. So I love when we get to do that. So we're going to start with the first one I already mentioned, Gall's Law, which is the one that Seth Godin wrote a short blog post about and I'd never heard before. So Gall's Law is: a complex system that works is invariably found to have evolved from a simple system that worked. A complex system designed from scratch never works and cannot be patched up to make it work. You have to start over with a working, simple system. Okay, so that's Gall's Law. For some reason, the first thing I think about there is my many attempts in years past to come up with, like, the perfect morning routine that had 14 different parts to it and all had to operate exactly in accordance to the one previous. And I could never be interrupted from beginning to end, or else it would be ruined. And of course, every single one of them failed me relatively shortly after attempting to put them into practice.
What I think of when I first hear this is this show, this podcast, this conversation. We're trying to take this complex thing called life and distill it down into its simplest form, right? Which is, for us, as you kind of framed up in the beginning, we'll talk about this in terms of hearts on fire, health, happiness, so on. We'll talk about this in terms of awareness, intention, action. We'll talk about this in terms of the 5 factors. I think what this is really kind of is like, can you break it down into some simple frameworks? And, the saying is that complexity is the enemy of execution.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what this, like, whereas there is immense power in simplicity. One of my favorite business books is Insanely Simple, which it talks about how Apple can become Apple.
Yep.
Which is so phenomenal. I've read it probably more than I've read any other book, honestly, because we keep on coming back to it in our business.
Insanely Simple. That's what it's called.
Insanely Simple. Yep. Ken Siegel.
Ken Siegel, Gall's Law.
Yep.
That's close.
What is it?
Gall's Law.
Oh, Gall's Law. Siegel.
Yeah, not
Siegel,
the same, but I'm trying here.
But I think of, like, there's Apple, but then think of how complex Amazon is.
Yep.
Right. Amazon has data storage warehouses, AWS. They have this, I can order something and it can be like basically delivered within 2 hours. Pretty soon it's going to be drones delivering these things. It's this incredibly complex website that sells everything.
Yep.
But that's not, Bezos was smart enough to understand this.
Yep.
And they started off by just selling books. They didn't start off as the everything store. He created that simple system that worked, and that became the foundation for complexity. So I think that this is also represented so much in the way, like the lean startup model in business, which is start with an MVP, like start with the very simplest product, not the finished one.
Yep.
The old manufacturing method was kind of created from Japan and Toyota, and they're the ones that inspired GE and all of the rest. You had to deliver a finished product, right? You had to deliver, if you're going to deliver a stove, you couldn't like continue to work on the stove once it was delivered. If you're going to deliver a car, the car had to be finished. You couldn't keep on working on it. In this lean startup model, it is create something incredibly simple. We're only going to sell books and then iterate on it. And it's this build, measure, learn, iterate, and keep going. So this law was created way before any of the new tech stuff. But it's funny how things keep coming back to these laws, right? Law. It's a thing. Yeah.
Do you see anything in Gall's law that you've learned, maybe the hard way, but maybe not, with programming or fitness or anything like that, in terms of starting with something simple?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, CrossFit, I think one of the things that really both of us were attracted to was the simplicity of the definition, right? And so, but I'd love to know if you've, again, learned it the easy way or the hard way, how you've got to start with simple and then build from there versus starting with something complex. I imagine, I don't imagine, I've seen it, these complicated programming structures that ultimately fall apart in real life, right?
Yeah. So it's, even if we pull it out of like programming, that might be a little nuanced. Let's talk about in terms of like health.
Yeah.
Like, think how complex health is.
Yeah. That's a great point.
Like, how do you get healthy? Whoa. Like, where do you even start that conversation? Well, we like to break that down into like the simplest part, and let's build up from there.
Yeah.
Don't work your way back down from complex. Start at the most fundamental, the baseline framework, and work your way back up. So health is a component of 10 different things, 5 of which are basically luck of the draw, 5 of which are made up of your lifestyle. The ones that are your lifestyle is how you eat, train, sleep, think, and connect. What is the first principles for each of those? Train 5 or 6 days a week, eat real food, sleep 8 hours, think like a warrior, connect with yourselves, other, and nature. So we've just taken all of health and distilled it down into 5 sentences. That's basically what this is saying. And then we can talk about eat real food, right? And we go, okay, what does it mean to be real food? How does that interact with the gut microbiome? Does ketogenic play a role in this? What about intermittent fasting? Is there a difference between certain amino acid structures? Is there a difference between complex and simple carbs? What about glycemic index versus glycemic load? Do we want to bring down your blood sugar as fast as we can, or should it never rise at all? Like, you get into all these complex things. What we end up finding out is, as you get into all these, EC does this better than anybody, right?
She does. Yep.
As you get more and more complex, you're just getting farther and farther away from the things that actually work.
Yeah.
Which is, no one's actually eating real food. It's like, why are we having all discussions about this complex stuff when that actually is the solve? If Bezos can't sell books, why is he going to sell?
He definitely can't sell everything.
He can't sell 50 different types of toothbrushes, right?
Yeah.
It's like, we're not going to sell everything if you can't sell books.
Yeah. I also think about back in the day before the gym was the gym. Like, if you couldn't get 2 people healthy in their garage, then you weren't ready to try to get 20, let alone 200 people healthy in your gym, right? And so recognizing, again, the idea of this is that you can't start with complexity. You've got to start with simplicity and let that evolve into something that is more complex. And I think it's really easy to think, I'm going to have the 15-step morning routine. I'm going to open the gym and get 100 members. I'm going to, right? Without recognizing that's a recipe for failure. And it is also avoiding the hard, boring work of building the foundation that is going to be necessary for when things get more complicated and more complex.
Well, it actually that's a, I don't know if we want to do this, but that's a fairly good segue to another one of these
Go
laws,
do it. Let's jump into it.
which is
Which one?
the Dunning-Kruger.
Okay, cool. Good. Jump into it. Yeah. Dunning-Kruger. Hold
Right,
on. Let me read that
go
one,
ahead,
what
yeah.
that is. Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which people with low ability in a domain overestimate their competence, while experts underestimate their relative ability. So I think that this one's relatively well known. But go ahead. Where do you see the connection?
So first, this is usually displayed like as a graph
Yeah.
when they show it, right? It's this big, huge spike, which shows people's level of confidence. So the y-axis is people's confidence in their ability. The x-axis is people's actual mastery of something.
Mm-hmm.
And what it shows is as people go from novice and they get a little bit of knowledge, they actually way overestimate how good they are at something.
Yep.
And then as they learn more, it becomes imperatively obvious, and the slope goes down, 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 down. Like, oh my God. And to the point where it goes, the lowest point on the graph is right before actual mastery. It's where you actually realize how little about this thing you actually know. So there's examples of this all over the place. We see this and this is why I think it was a nice segue. People in fitness, they work out, they see some results for themselves, and they're like, I could open a gym. Right. And it's because they're at the very beginning. They are no longer uneducated. They've just taken the first steps of education. And then they so overly estimate their competence level in this. And they open a gym. And then they're like, oh my God, maybe I don't know everything until I don't know when it is, 10, 15, 20 years later.
If you can survive that long.
Yeah, maybe I start to get an understanding of this. And then after you open up 50 gyms, this is literally like to mastery would be you've done this for 50 years and opened 50 gyms. Like I'm not there yet, but that would be like, okay, now I actually am a master. I actually do have high levels of confidence in this. So the really kind of famous example of this is that everyone always references is the above average driver study.
Yes.
Where 80 to, this is so awesome. 80 to 90% of people rate themselves as above average drivers.
Yes. Yep.
Which is statistically impossible. But it's because we all rate ourselves. We don't realize how much there is yet to learn in terms of being a good driver.
Yeah.
So it's one of those like the most dangerous levels. You just have to be aware of this. And I think it's kind of cool because once you become aware of it, you can kind of understand how the dangers, right? The most dangerous level of competence is the one where you don't know what you don't know. That's a really kind of dangerous place to operate from. As you become more and more aware, you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. This one's really about increasing self-awareness more than anything. And I guess it's also just as much about keeping your ego in check, being the learner, being more curious than judgmental, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The original study of this, the original Dunning-Kruger study was from 1999. And what happened was participants were graded in a logic and grammar test.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that did poorly dramatically overestimated their performance, thinking that they scored around the 60th percentile when they were actually near the bottom, while the top performers actually underestimated themselves.
Yep.
So it's that thing. It's like, if you know like logic and grammar incredibly well, you're going to be kind of like, oh my, if you know it a little bit, enough to be dangerous, like, I got this. It's a dangerous place to be, right? It's like,
you know, what's interesting though. I agree with you, but I think that the interesting, I don't know, dichotomy, and maybe I'm just thinking about this because we talked about where we got into this by talking about opening a gym and like, okay, you can train 5 people. It's time for you to open a gym.
mm-hmm.
There's also a degree to which I think you need to have, maybe not need, but it's sometimes helpful to be more confident that you are competent because that is sometimes what you need to take the first step or the second step in something that you're maybe not really ready for, but that you can't be ready for until you put yourself on the line and do it. In other words, like you're not going to be ready to open a gym until you've opened the gym, right?
Yeah.
And so there is an interesting sort of dichotomy here about decisions and moving and confidence and taking a chance, because you always kind of have to jump before you're quite ready to, before the wings are quite built. And so I do think there's something kind of interesting. And again, it probably just comes back to awareness of, okay, I'm going to open a gym. I've never done this before. So the smart thing would be not to not open the gym, but the smart thing would be, can I find two people who have opened a gym and have had it open for 5 years? And can I get them to give me advice? Can I get them to help? Can I get them to invest? Right. And so it's like a little bit of the push and pull of, yeah, I know there's a lot that I don't know, but I'm still confident that I'm going to do it anyways.
I think it's modal specific, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And again, I might just be stuck on the gym.
Yeah. I don't want my surgeon or my pilot to be like, I got you guys. I got you.
I watched The Pit. I'm good.
I have YouTube. I wouldn't want to go free solo El Capitan with somebody that's like, no, I'm good. Like, let's go do this. I have a membership at a rock climbing gym.
Yeah.
So there's obviously always a level of confidence that is necessary to take any steps.
Yep.
I think that this is speaking to the dangerous part of incompetence.
Mm-hmm.
Like you think, remember, like the way the graph shows is the highest level of confidence next to actual mastery is the beginner.
Mm.
So the beginner is not the one that should be opening up the gym. If you've trained 5 people and gotten good results, then maybe we could say you're not the actual beginner. Maybe you are, like, because you've worked with 5 people. This is different than like, I work out, I'll open a gym.
Yep.
I think it just depends on the modal and then kind of like where we are in terms of that growth trajectory.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. There's a misconception I want to push back on, one that I think a lot of women specifically carry without even realizing it. The idea of taking care of yourself more means you're taking care of others less. That if you put your own health, your own well-being, your own emotional strength first, somehow that's selfish, and it is not. It is in fact the opposite. The people who show up most fully for the ones they love are almost always the ones who have also made themselves a priority. And yet so many women are running on empty, giving everything to everyone else and putting themselves last. This March, we recognize International Women's Day. BetterHelp wants to remind every woman that her emotional well-being matters just as much. BetterHelp connects you with a fully licensed therapist matched to your needs to help you find balance, set healthy boundaries, and build the strength that makes everything else possible. Over 6 million people have found support through BetterHelp, the world's largest online therapy platform. Your emotional well-being matters. Find support to feel lighter in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/excellence. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/excellence. We are brought to you this time around by Mint Mobile Premium Wireless Plans, starting at just $15 a month, delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. I will be honest with you, I put off switching wireless carriers for entirely too long. I knew I was overpaying, but I told myself the hassle wasn't going to be worth it, but it is worth it. I just made the switch to Mint Mobile, and my bill went from about $80 a month down to about $15, and I'm not very good at math, but that seems better. Same coverage, high-speed data, unlimited talk and text, and I brought my own phone and number over, so easy peasy. I activated the eSIM in just a few minutes. I got no long-term contracts, no silliness. So now I'm using Mint Mobile, and I think you should too. If you like your money, Mint Mobile is for you. Shop plans at mintmobile.com/excellence. That's mintmobile.com/excellence. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month, 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customer offer from first 3 months only, then full price plans available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. We are brought to you this time around by Shopify. Here's something I've come to believe pretty deeply. You can't do hard things by yourself. Whether it's fitness, building a habit, starting a business, having the right support around you changes everything. A coach who knows what you're doing, a community that keeps you accountable, people who have been where you're going and can help you get there faster. Starting a business, of course, no different. For millions of people, Shopify is that built-in partner. Behind brands you know, Gymshark, Allbirds, Magic Spoon, and countless businesses just getting started, Shopify is the commerce platform that handles the hard stuff so you can focus on building. Hundreds of ready-to-use templates to get your store up fast, built-in AI tools to write product descriptions and sharpen your pages, email and social campaigns to find your customers, inventory, payments, analytics, all in one place, and award-winning 24/7 support whenever you get stuck. You don't have to figure all of this out alone. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/excellence. That's shopify.com/excellence. Okay, that was our. So we talked about Gall's law. Talked about, what was that? The Dunning-Kruger effect. I'm going to do another. I know we said before recording that I was going to go in order, but it's kind of fun to see if we can connect dots here. I'm going to go to one that feels at least a little bit connected, which is Maslow's hammer, which states if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That feels like an error that somebody who has low competence and high confidence might do. I think I thought about that when you were talking about maybe about fitness or health, or the idea of like, of, well, like the idea of like, well, CrossFit worked for me, so it'll work for you, without taking into the context of the individual, right? Or something similar to that.
Yeah. So what is it? If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right?
Yeah. That's basically if all you have is a hammer, everything looks
if all
like
you have is a hammer. Yeah. So back to like that pilot surgeon type thing. Like in the medical community, you see this all the time. Whereas if you go to you have an issue.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to a surgeon, what are they going to say you need to have
surgery?
fixed?
Yep.
Surgery. If you go to a functional medicine practitioner, what are they going to say you need to do? Take some supplements. If you go to a chiropractor, they're going to say, we just need to crack your back.
Yep.
If you go to a internist, they're going to be like, and that's the whole, they're going to look to solve the problems with their strengths. This is the whole idea. If I have a hammer, this is the thing I'm going to do. So we're going to lean into that. This happens in business. There's an issue in the business is declining. The operator says we need better systems. The visionary says we need bigger ideas. The marketer's like, we need better messaging.
Yeah.
The finance person says like, we need to cut our costs. It's like, it's just like we want to like, kind of like just recognize the biases, recognize that, yes, we have strengths and we should lean into those. But because we have strengths doesn't mean we necessarily have the right answers.
Mm.
You might be the marketer and you might be able to solve this a little bit with better messaging. But what if this truly just is like an operations issue? Like something's broken in the machinery. You thinking that it's all a marketing thing is probably not the best way to come to those conversations. And this happens in fitness, right? Like this happens all the time in fitness. I need to get fitter. So what do I need to do? If you go to a running coach, what are they going to say? You go to a strength coach, what are they going to say?
Yep.
You go to a CrossFit gym, what are they going to say? You go to a nutritionist, what are they going to say? It's like
100%. Yep.
So it's one of those things that it's exactly right. This are kind of like, it's cool how we're kind of like segueing from one to the others. But if Dunning-Kruger, I always want to say like Dunning-Kruger, is that very similar to the name of the paper company in The Office?
Dunder Mifflin.
Okay, Dunder Mifflin. Whenever I hear Dunning-Kruger, I always think of The Office. Okay, Dunder Mifflin. So the Dunning-Kruger, that's more like holistic incompetence versus mastery.
Yep.
This is a little bit more like strengths and weaknesses inside of a particular domain or problem set.
Mm.
So like this is where like almost like if you are the master, you get all the way over. Your expertise could actually quietly become your blind spots.
Yes. Yep. Because you've gotten feedback that says, okay, you're good at this thing. And then you want to perpetuate that feeling of being good at the thing by using the thing to prove that you're good at the thing.
That's right. Yeah. And it's not malicious, right?
No. It's
a trained pattern recognition.
Yep.
Like I see this, so this is how I solve this.
Yep.
I recently went to the doctor. I was sharing this before we recorded a little bit. I had a tweak in my back.
Yep.
And I went and saw a true spine doctor that takes x-rays, MRIs, looks at the discs.
Yep.
And the solution for them and the only thing we talked about was whether I should be taking a medication, getting an injection, or having surgery.
Mm-hmm. The three hammers.
Yeah. I went to a acupuncturist, and none of those three things were talked about.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's necessarily a right or a wrong, or it's good or it's bad. It's that they're going to go with their biases, their expertise, and solve things that fall in line with the patterns that they're seeing.
Yep.
If this, then that.
Yep.
And it comes from years of solving things.
I think you've been presenting it as like other people giving us their hammer, but I think it's just as likely that we are carrying around a hammer looking for the nails in our own life. And I think
for
about
sure.
like, just imagining somebody who through their 20s and their 30s, they were a vegetarian and they did yoga, and that worked out great. That was fine. And then whatever reason they hit 40 and those two things didn't work anymore. And all they kept trying to do is like, well, vegetarian and yoga used to work. And so I'm just going to try it harder. I'm going to do it more. This is the hammer that I have. And the hammer used to hit all the nails that I needed, but I don't want to hand my hammer in to pick up another tool. And so I'm just going to keep hammering things. I'm going to keep hammering in the hopes that it works. And I think that's a slightly extreme example, but I think we do that all the time. Like the thing that used to work, I don't want to change it, even though today it's no longer working.
Yeah,
and I
right.
think we've got to be aware of when we're the one wielding the hammer, and when we've got to put it down and like figure out what else might be in the toolbox.
Yeah, right. There's so many parallels. There's so many ways. There's so many anecdotes for that, right? Not only the vegan yogi,
Yep.
right, but the hard charging CEO.
Yep.
Right. I solved this by working harder, by
Yes.
getting up earlier.
Yep.
But like, there's the person that avoids all confrontation by turning it into humor, right? And all of a sudden, like, that's not working anymore. Yeah, it's so good. Like your strengths. Yeah, so it's not even necessarily strengths in that point. It's like your MO, your defaults, your
the habit, the habitual response.
The habitual response becomes the flywheel. It's just like this, that we're just gonna take the next turn on this thing.
Yeah. I love what you said about the the response being like, I'm just gonna make a joke of this, right? My response to discomfort is to make a joke. And then at some point you realize that hasn't worked for years. And you have to then have the awareness and the intention and then the action of saying, okay, when I have that feeling, I'm not going to hit it with the hammer that I've always hit things with. I'm going to not hit it with anything, or I'm going to use a screwdriver, whatever the strange tool metaphor might be.
Yeah.
But I think that's really important to recognize that that's really what kind of what a habit is. It's just like it's not thinking it's hitting that thing with a hammer.
Yeah. As you're saying that, what else it is, what's a dangerous habit? An addiction.
Yeah.
Right. So this is like, okay, I feel stressed. I'm going to go get a drink. Right. I feel terrible with myself. I'm going to do X, Y, or Z. And that's cool. Like that's your hammer. And the nail presents itself. You're like, this is how I do it. And it becomes that level of, it does go right into our awareness, intention, action. The awareness that this is no longer helping.
Yeah. What was that one? That was Maslow's hammer. Before that was Dunning-Kruger. And then we got to Gall's law. I cannot intelligently connect another one from our list, so I'm just going to pick one randomly.
Cool.
I'm just going to do it. I'll go back up to the top. Goodhart's law. Goodhart's law says, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Yeah. So I like this one. This pops up in business a fair amount.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of anecdotal stories about how this can be non-helpful as a starter to like downright detrimental in the fall of a business. And the example that's used there a lot is Wells Fargo.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
They had a fake account scandal.
Yep.
Because their bank employees were basically rewarded for a metric, which was basically how many accounts they could open.
Yep.
And so it became such a thing that instead of the idea behind this is the Goodhart's law is you're tracking things because they correlate or feed up to what you're actually trying to do.
Yep. You believe that they're leading indicators to
love
something.
that. And particularly leading indicators, not lagging. We can get into that conversation. That's a phenomenal point out. But what ends up happening is you end up chasing the number instead of the thing that you're actually,
Yep.
what the number's supposed to represent.
Yes.
And the moment you serve the metric instead of the mission, you've drifted away from what you're actually trying to do. Metrics become the feedback instead of what they should be, which is kind of like signposts. They're like, they create guardrails and tell you the direction you're going.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, again, the whole thing was not about whatever their mission actually was, right? Serving their customers, probably be a good mission.
Hope, yes.
Yeah. Instead, they forged accounts.
Yes.
And because that's what was actually the most important thing. This comes up in like our business. So we're like CompTrain, as a SaaS business, as a software as a subscription business, we try to reduce churn.
Yep. And
churn is the number of members that leave in a given month. And it's as a percentage. So if you have a 10% churn, that means, and you have let's say you have 1,000 people, that means 100 people left last month.
Yep.
A lot of software companies, this is a huge number. This is one of the telling numbers for the health of a SaaS business. So if you put that as the thing, like we're going to chase the metric instead of chase what the metric represents. So what that metric represents is how satisfied your clients are.
Yep.
Right? Because they're not leaving. They're choosing to stay and not leave. But you can hack it. You can hack that number. And you can hack that number by not making your clients more satisfied. There's a number of ways you can do it. You could do yearly subscriptions. Let's say everyone leaves after 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if you only sold yearly subscriptions?
Yep.
Like right immediately,
you improved your
lifetime value
churn.
went up 4 times. Exactly.
Right.
You 4x'd your lifetime value or your length of engagement, and your churn got tripled. You could really hurt the health of the business if you charge $100 a month for your service and your churn is 10%. You're like, we really want to get to 5%. Well, if you cut the price in half, your churn is going to go down. But is that really helping the health of the business? So it's one of these things you just have to be conscious of. We see it in fitness where people are like, the goal is to get healthier and look better, but the weight on the scale is what tells the total story. And they start chasing the scale instead of what the scale represents,
Yep.
which is confidence in your body and health.
Yep.
So it's a matter of just kind of like being aware of, and it's easy to do, honestly, is having that sort of like, there's like a tension, right? Where it's like, you want the discipline through numbers and data, but you don't want to get distorted by the numbers.
Yes. I think the scale example is a really good one. If you get obsessed with the number, making the number go down without any recognition of what happens to your performance, what happens to your vitality, what happens to your capacity to respond, if all you're looking at is the number on the scale, then that is that no longer becomes or no longer is a good measure. I think a version of that, I think people can really recognize themselves having fallen victim to before. And I think where I've always seen Goodhart's law talked about is like social media and the vanity metrics that, and again, it's business related, but I think it's useful to think about, which is like, if you were put in charge of growing a gym's Instagram follower count, for whatever reason, like that's the metric that the CEO decides, like, that's the thing that's the most important thing. And that's what you're rewarded on. That's what you're given feedback on. That's what your job description is. What would you do? You would do the things that would get you to go viral. But going viral on Instagram, if you're a gym, is not useful because actually you're just trying to talk to like the 400 people within 2 miles of you. And they don't care if you've gone viral, right? Because you're not talking to them. And so it's just a misalignment of the impact you're aiming for, the goal you're really trying to get to, and what should be a stop on the way, but ultimately becomes a whole different destination. And then you act in accordance with that new destination and not the original one.
Love it. Yeah, the gym put out like what, instead of chasing what the algorithm rewards, right? Which is you actually do things that's going to help the funnel performance of the business. You're actually trying to, if it's not capturing leads, which you can then nurture to convert to sales, what's the purpose of that? Yeah, right, exactly.
Right, and then it just becomes a vanity exercise.
Yep.
We are brought to you this time around by Mizzen and Main, the original performance fabric dress shirt. I still have my first Mizzen and Main shirt from, 10 years ago. It still holds up. I still wear it. That is the thing about quality. It absolutely compounds. My current use case, this is kind of fun. I coach my son's kindergarten indoor soccer practice. It is absolute absurdity, and I make it a personal mission to be the best dressed coach in the gymnasium. Mizzen in Maine makes that very easy. Their shirts look sharp the moment you pull them off the hanger. No ironing, no dry cleaning, no steaming. Stretchy, lightweight, moisture wicking, wrinkle resistant, and completely machine washable. You will look polished, you will feel comfortable, and you can absolutely chase 5-year-olds around a gymnasium without thinking twice. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase. MizzenandMain.com with the promo code Excellence20. That's the number 20. That's Mizzen, spelled Mizzen, and Main, Main.com. Promo code Excellence20, MizzenandMain.com. And if you'd rather shop IRL, you can find Mizzen and Main stores in select states. We're brought to you this time around by Element, the zero sugar electrolyte drink mix that's been part of our daily routine here at the show for longer than almost anything else I can think of. You've probably heard us talk about Element on the show before. It's because it keeps on working. It's delicious as well. Here's what I used to notice the days that I was most locked in, long stretches at the computer, deep work sessions, hours in the zone. I'd still hit the wall somewhere around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Headaches crept in. Brain gone fuzzy, focus just gone. More often than not, I wasn't tired. I was just kind of underhydrated. Element is formulated based on research showing optimal health at sodium levels 2 to 3 times higher than standard recommendations, with a meaningful dose of sodium, potassium, and magnesium in every serving. No sugar, no food dye, no nonsense. They've also just launched a 12-ounce sparkling can. I love these. 4 great flavors built for exactly those in-between moments of the day when you just need to stay sharp. Element was one of the first brands to ever partner with us here at the show, and that longevity says something. Get a free sample pack with any order. Go to drinkelement.com/excellence. That's drinklmnt, the letters.com/excellence. We are sponsored this time around by Warby Parker, the brand that has completely reimagined what it feels like to buy quality eyewear. I will be honest, I never really cared about what kind of sunglasses I wore, but I recently decided that I was going to be a grown-up and actually get a great pair, and I ended up at Warby Parker. Before I even ordered, I fell down a rabbit hole on their virtual try-on feature. You just point your phone, or in my case, my computer, at my face and tried on a dozen frames. I spent way too long doing it, but I landed on the Perkins LBF in black matte Eclipse. They just showed up and I love them. Beyond sunglasses, Warby Parker carries prescription glasses starting at just $95, contacts, online eye exams, and more, all in one single place. Our listeners get 15% off plus free shipping when they buy 2 or more pairs of prescription glasses at warbyparker.com/excellence. That's 15% off when you buy 2 pairs of glasses at warbyparker.com/excellence. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the show and tell them that we sent you. All right, let's move on to a new one. Let's go with Hick's Law. Hick's Law states the time it takes to make a decision increases with the number and complexity of choices. And this is why your diet should be woefully boring. That's what I say.
Okay, so this one's pretty straightforward, but it kind of goes, it's that, again, power of simplicity, right?
Decision fatigue,
right? And there's so many of these famous studies, which Alex Hormozy did a recent post about this, where there's the best sales offer is you start off by saying, here's one thing we offer. You don't want that. So between these two, which one would you like? And does the credit card on file work for you? So what you're saying is we have 3 options. This one's you're not even going to like this one. So now we're down to just these 2. So you're giving the illusion of more, but you're just down to these 2. Which one of these 2 means say, for the gym, we have a VIP, which is $1,000 a month. You get a personal nutrition person that goes shopping with you. You get your own valet parking spot. You get the dry cleaning and the towels. That doesn't sound like something that you'd be interested in. Instead, what we have is an unlimited or 3 days a week one. Of those 2 options, which one works better for you? It's just all of a sudden, it's the less decisions, the better. The most I think the most famous example of this was when Steve Jobs came back into Apple. He did what was called a product line simplification.
Yeah.
When he returned to Apple, there was kind of what Apple had done, what every other computer company did, which is they had dozens of computer models, dozens, like 30-ish. So imagine going into a store and being like, I'd like to buy a computer. And the person being like, well, which one would you like? And you're like, well, what are the differences? And they explain 37 different models from different sizes to gigahertz and memory and all of these other things. This one's what Steve Jobs did is he went in and stripped that down, drew a 2x2 grid and we do consumers versus pros and desktops versus portable.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. 4 products. We're done. And everyone knows that's when Apple, it's one of the reasons Apple took off. He eliminated 70% of the product line. And it went from near bankruptcy to the most valuable company in the world.
Yeah.
Not by adding options, but by removing them.
Yeah. And again, it's because the time it takes to make a decision, it's the make a decision part that I think is easy to overlook in that. And with the Apple example, there's 2 ends of that make a decision, right? The time it takes to make a decision as a consumer, if you give a consumer 37 options, they're going to take considerably longer to make a decision if they make a decision whatsoever, at all. And then in terms of like the business or being in the position where you've got to make decisions is now you've got 37 computers that you've got to make a series of decisions on every single day, every single week, every single month, every single quarter versus, okay, we've got 4 computers and now we can make the decisions because the decisions are one thing, but then it's the actions after the decisions that actually matter, right? And so if you take forever to make the decision, then you decrease the amount of time you have to put those decisions into action. And so I think that's the really important thing to remember here is what we're trying to get to is the shortest distance between the decision and the action taken, because the action is where all the change happens, all the progress is made, et cetera. And so if we've got a million decisions to make, we're just pushing down the field, the point at which we have to make a decision, and then the point at which we actually have to put that decision into action.
Yeah, it's like the reason that these like CEOs wear the same black T-shirt, every single. They just want to have to decide what they're wearing. But I really like what you said is what we're trying to do is get to action, right? And we don't. The less decisions we can make, the better, both for decision fatigue and saving your energy for the real ones, right?
Yes.
Like the real big ones. The other thing that I tend to kind of like been able to tease out a little bit is, this is a little bit. Was it Kidling's Law where you write it down?
Yeah, that was Kidling's Law. Yep.
Okay. So this is actually when we're in our leadership meetings and we're trying to solve a problem, the normal evolution of that, we call it IDS, identification, discussion, and solve. The normal, like how to work through a problem set is complexity. We tend to make the choices harder because we put multiple components into a singular problem. So I found an incredibly valuable practice is pausing and just saying, I think we actually are trying to solve 2 problems here. It sounds like we have a bandwidth problem for our coaches, like they feel like they're coaching too much. And we have this other problem of compensation, right? I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Those actually are 2 different things. And when you put how much I'm working in with on top of that, how much I'm getting paid, that creates a very challenging field to navigate.
Yep.
Because you're trying to solve 2 variables.
Yep.
And if you're able to remove one of those and solve for one, it helps a ton. And here's the practice that we've done is this is kind of like as the leader or the moderator of a discussion. I think this is the role is can you simplify? It's funny how all these things kind of come back to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Simplify it down to the core. And if there's multiple cores, then write down the multiple cores. Kidling's Law, write them down.
Yep. Because
what ends up happening is if you don't write them down, you end up bouncing back and forth between them again.
Yep.
If you write them on a whiteboard, right, for this magic of whiteboard, not on a computer screen, not on a shared TV, you write them on a whiteboard. It's funny how passionate I am about that. And let that help be the guide to the conversation and be like, all right, let's talk about this one. Because then they see it and they see the other one up there and they realize when they're tangenting. Tangenting?
Yes.
Is that a word?
Tangenting?
falling prey to a tangent. I don't know.
Or when they're trying to your point, or when they're trying to solve two problems with.
That's actually what I meant to say, is when they're getting distracted by pulling the other one in. We go, okay, pause. Yeah, I get it. We also need to talk about compensation.
Yep.
But let's first talk about do we have the bandwidth? Are we putting our energy in the right places? Do we have and then let's solve that. It's really hard to find multiple things. And this happens in normal, like everyday life conversations. You want to go on date night? Yeah, that sounds great. Okay. What day should we go this week? Should we invite anybody? Where do you want to go? And should we get a babysitter or leave the kids at home? How do we want to do that?
Yeah.
It's like, how hard is it to work through that?
That reminds me of something you said before when we've talked about training, which is that you'd much rather just train every day than to figure out, is today the day that I'm going to get into the gym and work out? Because really, which I think is spot on, is really like reducing the set of choices you have to make. Because again, you get to, okay, well, today's a day, so I'm going to the gym. The decision is made and the actions can be taken versus, I wonder, okay, today's Tuesday. I might try to get there on Wednesday, maybe Friday. So that means I might, maybe today's a rest day. Right. And like it's
imagine that as well with the multitude variables of like, should I work out today? If I work out, should I work out at home? Should I go to the gym? Should I ride my bike? Should I do strength? Should I do yoga? Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they try to like eliminate 70% of the product line.
Yeah. Yes. Love that. Let's go to the one that I think is my favorite, even though I don't know that I totally get it, which is called Littlewood's Law. It says, in the course of any normal person's life, miracles happen at a rate of roughly 1 per month. I think I just love the idea that is true, even if I don't know for sure that it is. I don't know who Littlewood is, so I can't ask him. But I love this idea of miracles happening at a rate of roughly 1 per month. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that one?
So I love Morgan Housel's Same as Ever book.
Yeah.
It's like one of my,
yep.
I have like a list of books. I think there's like 5 that are just prerequisites that everyone kind of needs to read just to get up to speed and in the game. And then there's like the next, and that's one of my next, because it just frames things up so crazy well. He argues that we consistently underestimate how often unlikely things happen. And that's what it is.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's how I started to reframe the idea of miracle, which is just...
That's right.
I think
it doesn't have to be like miracle in a good way. It could be miracle in a pandemic.
Yeah, it could just be something unexpected or something statistically unlikely to have happened. Yes. I think when we hear the word miracle, of course, it's like layered with all of this meaning and context of like raising the dead. But I think we can work within a frame that is a little bit more, we can wrap our hands around a little bit easier.
Yeah. So if a miracle is like a 1 in a million, right? Well, when there's 8 billion people living on planet Earth, 1 in a million happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's not just to us, but it happens to our neighbor, our friend, our mom, and our brother, and the person you go to the gym with.
Yep.
So what feels like extraordinary is just sort of like math playing out.
Yes.
It's not that it is a miracle. It's actually statistically, these things are going to show up, which is cool, like for the good ones. It's also, Nassim Taleb talks about them as black swans, which is basically just a reminder that rare events, while they shock us when they happen, they're more laws of averages. They're not strange things. They're going to happen.
Yeah.
It's again, like, it's a difference of like what we call luck is more just like probability.
Yes. Yep.
Compounded, right? Because there's so many of us and we're alive. We're experiencing 4,000 weeks. 8 billion people are experiencing 4,000 weeks.
Yep.
So these miracles are happening constantly around us.
I love the idea of reframing randomness as a miracle, right? Like, I don't know why, but the vision of like a tree falling and missing your car by 3 inches, you could say, oh, that was pretty lucky. Or you could say that was a miracle, because it's just as likely that it fell on your car that it fell next to your car. And then it just becomes about how you frame it. And can we learn to frame randomness as miracles? I think if we can, how much better is life? How much better is the world? How much happier are we to be in the world when we start to recognize that with a simple redefinition, we can see miracles everywhere? I think that's so cool.
Yeah. I don't know. I really like the same as everything
Mm,
because it gives what I think is what you don't want to do is have the misalignment between expectations and reality,
mhm.
right? And this kind of just frames things up that you should expect these things.
Yeah.
And whether they're like miracles in the good, again, like 1 in a million events, right? Good or bad. But particularly when they're bad, if you don't have like a sort of if you think that these are 1 in millions that are happening to you in a bad way, that can be a tough thing to navigate.
Mhm.
And then said another way is like, and then also like just be on the lookout because the good one is coming around the corner next month. Like, because statistically, that's probably what's going to happen. A 1 in a million will happen to you once a month. I like your example of the tree falling and just missing your car.
Mhm.
I love watching those like guys saving the day things on Instagram. Have you ever seen that? Like
Yes.
pulling the kid away from the car that's careening out of
Yep.
control
Mhm.
through the marketplace, and like saves it by like you can't even tell how the car missed him, and
Yep. Mhm.
they save the kid that's about to walk through the open sewer grate in the street.
Yep.
It's like, yeah, those are. I mean, it's like the new media world that we're living in, and we see if you look for them, you see these things all over the place now.
Yeah.
You start to recognize, like, wow, those they actually kind of are all over the place.
Mm. Let's do one more and then we'll get the heck out of here. We got through more than I thought. I think let's do one that I think would be wildly useful for people to implement into their lives more, which is called Hanlon's razor, which states never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. And I sometimes like to replace stupidity with indifference because I think that's probably more likely the case most of the time. Never attribute to malice that which could be adequately explained by indifference.
I so love to know if he actually meant that or if he actually meant stupidity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is, I was talking about those like the 5 prerequisite books.
Mm.
One of those for me is How to Win Friends and Influence People
Yep.
by Carnegie.
Yep.
And he has a thing in there, which is appeal to the nobler motive,
Yes.
which is give people the benefit of the doubt. Like they probably weren't doing this to be a dink or mean to you, right? They probably are just caught up in their own stuff. So we see this all the time in like traffic, right? Someone cuts you off
Yep.
and they're a maniac, right? You cut someone else off and you're just in a rush. You need to get to
Right.
that exit.
You're justified.
Yeah. So instead of judging people's character based off of actions that they might have done, just like give them the benefit of the doubt. Heather's so damn good at this. Like,
Yeah.
I think we were watching like, this is years ago, but we were watching like Jackass, the movie,
Yeah.
and or the show or something like that. And at one point they put like an infant baby in a like one of those, what are those called that like you take the stroller and it comes out though it's a bassinet.
Yeah.
Like
The chair, whatever, or the seat. Yeah.
the chair, the seat. I'm gonna go with bassinet. It sounds
Okay,
way
sure.
smarter.
All right. That's good.
They put it on top of the
Of
car. Yeah, as they're getting like their groceries in and stuff like that, and they pretend to get distracted and they leave the baby on top of the car and drive away. And obviously, like strangers are freak out and come over, and that's the whole
Yeah,
shtick,
that's the
right?
bit. Yep.
And it's horrific. Like oh my god! And like immediately you're like, what kind of person would ever? And Heather's like that could happen. Like that.
Yeah.
Hey, that don't judge. Like you never know. And she's done also a really good job of, you see parents at like the playground and maybe they're like yelling at their kids, right? And she's like, maybe and so badly you want to like, well, they're bad parents. I would never do that. But maybe they're just having that one moment that we've all had, right? So it's this resisting the temptation to judge character when it probably has more to do with circumstance.
Yeah. How much stress?
Yeah. I was going to say another kind of like anecdotal, like real world, like to bring it home. You get an email from a coworker, right? That's like really short and blunt.
Yep.
It's so easy to go like, they're disrespecting me,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you could just as easily say like, oh, wow, they're probably really overwhelmed right now.
Yeah.
It's this, one creates calm, one creates conflict.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is like how often when we choose to attribute something to malice versus stupidity or indifference, all we really end up doing is creating stress for ourselves. All we're doing is choosing the story that most negatively affects us and our internal state and our ability to stay calm and our ability to respond and not react. Whereas if you actually look at these things and think, to your point, like, oh, wow, that she must be really overwhelmed right now. Otherwise, she wouldn't have sent me that email. Then you're in a state, sympathy or empathy. You actually are in a position to create a stronger relationship if you look at it through that, than a weaker one if you are now defensive and you put up and you respond back shortly. And then all of a sudden it's a whole thing that just makes your life worse. And so it's what I like about this is just, if you can start to do this, if we can start to do this, we just lower the opportunities to inflict stress upon ourselves where we have no proof that stress is necessary.
Yeah, that's great. Upon ourselves, upon our families.
Yep.
There's a famous marriage researcher named John Gottman. And what he found was that stable couples tend to interpret negative, I should say ambiguous. It's hard to determine whether it's positive or negative, ambiguous behavior positively. They give their partners the benefit of the doubt.
Yep.
Unstable couples inherit ambiguity negatively.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Same event, different. What the only difference is their assumptions.
Yep.
Are you assuming the word malice, right? Or are you assuming that they're trying their best? What you say, like, the happiest people aren't surrounded by better humans. They just make more generous interpretations.
I like that. They appeal to the nobler motive.
Appeal to the nobler motive.
That's great. I love that.
Give them the benefit of the doubt.
That's a great place to wrap up. Thank you. That was fun. I think we got to, I don't know, maybe we got to 8, which is, I think, better than I actually expected. So good on us. Thank you, Ben. That was fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick. Fun.
Thank you so very much for tuning into the show this week. 2 quick things before you go. First, if you want even more from this episode, go check out the full 5-3-1 breakdown. We give you the 5 big ideas from the episode, 3 reflection questions to help you process it all, and 1 key takeaway that you can put into action right now. The link is in the show notes. The second thing, while you're there, check out the Chase Club. It's our premium membership where we include bonus content, ad-free episodes, and a brand new Chase Tracker app. Check it all out at chasingexcellence.email.